It's June 1941. After an extremely exhausting journey that lasted several days, we arrived in Laskow, Poland, about 8 kilometers from the Russian border. The dust and heat are terrible. Laskow, which is nothing more than a small hick town with an unmistakable Ukrainian feel to it, is populated by friendly and clean people. The houses are small, single-story constructions with thatched roofs. As wood and straw are the most common construction materials, both the barns and the houses are made from woven willow. The rooms, small but cosy, are always whitewashed or painted light blue with woven straw mats, and beautiful local flowers decorating the ovens, walls, and ceilings. Vibrant embroidered pillows and curtains in their blaze of colour create a warm but simple atmosphere in the tiny rooms. We pitch our tents in the barn and enjoy some well-deserved peace and quiet. Drive to Zamosk in order to take position. The beauty of the town's market is remarkable. The rich Baroque facades of the town hall and centre, though unfamiliar to me, are delightful. Truly a wonderful style. Russian churches with their onion domes are found everywhere along the way. The street signs and storefronts are mostly bilingual German and Ukrainian. Received orders to drive to the Bug River. With the main intelligence unit already on location there, I am ordered to map out our observations of the enemy's positions. On my way there, the construction and support units were feverishly working on the roads in disrepair, rushing to build a corduroy road across the swamps and mud. I arrive in Piaseczno around noon. The forest there has already been taken by the Russians. The Russian flag, with its hammer and sickle, waves within a stone's throw. It is unimaginable what would happen to our cohorts if the Russians were to get the idea to send out a reconnaissance unit to explore the area. We know all too well that this is possible. How should we handle this? The Russian bunkers and machine gun positions are just 100 meters away, facing 10 soldiers and a few Pionierren engineers. The river is the border past it, the abyss. If the Russians do come, we will be unable to retreat, as we are without vehicles. Are we the scapegoats who are supposed to be slaughtered by the Russians as an excuse for the German attack? Similar situations took place in Poland. A truly honourable death sentence. Nevertheless, we sleep peacefully. We do not even bother to set out guards. Why should we, only to anticipate the inevitable? My dear Roselle, if I wrote to you about such events, you surely would not find any peace of mind. How good it is that you do not know about this. The situation is becoming more and more serious. Russian scouts were on our side of the river last night, close to our encampment. Gauging from the footprints in the sand, it must have been a group of at least 20 men. What a fine mess we have gotten ourselves into. Should we fire at them? We are now no longer able to make a move without being noticed. They track our every movement with their Scherenfernrohr all day long. We have to sneak like Indians to the riverbank in order to accomplish our task. This is how I will have to map out the enemy's positions and establish the artillery sectors tomorrow, which should allow us to complete our assignment. I hope that will be the result. What luck we have. I was able to finish my task without any disruption from the Reds, Die Roten. I now also know the location of where we, along with our Pionierren, are going to traverse the river. Once again, we will be part of the first wave. Since the mission is intended to surprise the Russians, the attack will probably commence in a few days. The forest to our rear is filled with intense activity. Heavy artillery has been placed in position. Our panzers have also arrived. Flak cannons were set in place last night. There is a great deal of activity on the enemy side as well. The Reds have strengthened their positions, and given the noise from the opposing forest, they appear to have rolled their tanks into position. I am extremely tired tonight, and it is still unbearably hot. It is raining, which is a blessing for the local farmers, but bad news for us. Where there were paths yesterday, there are muddy creeks today, which reach up to the top of my jackboots. Our commander, General Willy Moser, arrives at noon. He brings bad news, declaring that we have to stay put for a few more days. The weather clears up in the evening, and a stroll down to the bridgehead on the Bug wonderfully relaxes my nerves, which have suffered greatly under the tension of the past few days. I now know the day of the attack. It will unfold on June 21st and stretch across an expansive front. What will the following weeks bring? I think of my dear family with longing. As I have asked myself so often in the past, I wonder if my longing actually comes from simply missing the comforts of civilian life. I thought about this on my way down to the fortifications on the Bug. Such an idea is not possible. Time and time again I envision Roselle and Butsiben, daughter Erica. How else could the true love that speaks from each line of her letters touch me so deeply? These two people are the most precious things that life could have taken away from me. My thoughts are with father and mother, these two kind beings. The love between is us great. With gratitude, I think of all the good things they have done for Roselle and me. God willing, I will get through the coming weeks for their sake. It is now becoming serious. Under the cover of night, the entire division will move into attack formation. Reinforcement troops from the 528th Infantry Regiment arrived today around noon, young guys with fresh faces. For some of them, the sun will shine for only a few more days. Such is the soldier's fate. I expect the attack to occur across the front on Sunday. This new day has already brought great joy to me, 2 lovely letters from my dear Roselle, and 1 sweet letter from Hanau. My most recent observations lead me to assume that our section of the front should expect great resistance. Will our surprise maneuver really succeed? Further to the rear, farmers are forced to leave their fields and property. Our troops might also have to advance tomorrow. It is atrocious. The farmers' wives hurl themselves on the ground, pulling their hair. All this damn crying. There is no way we can help them. Hooray! The greatest battle of all times will start the day after tomorrow. Our cabin is being abandoned. The division has arrived. Final preparations for the strike on the Bug fortifications. The attack starts tonight at 0300 hours. We are attached to the von Kleist Group, 1st Panzergruppe commanded by Field Marshal Paul Ludwig Ewald von Kleist. Our assignment? A rapid putsch in wedge formation, regardless of casualties. For the moment, there is a quiet, wonderful twilight peacefulness over the countryside. The huts in the village will be on fire in a few hours. The air will be filled with the howling and screeching of shells. The impact of the shelling will tear apart the fields and roads. How amazing it is that we are once again part of this offensive fighting under Kleist. Farewell, my wife and sweet Erica. Farewell, my beloved parents. You will be in my thoughts tomorrow. Do not worry, a soldier's luck will be with me. All of a sudden, at exactly 3:15 hours, and apparently out of the blue, an opening salvo emerges from the barrels of hundreds of guns of all calibers. The howling and staccato of Stalin's arsenal fills the air as if Armageddon had begun. It is impossible to comprehend one's world in such an inferno. Our homeland is still innocently asleep, while here death is already collecting a rich harvest. We crouch in our holes with pallid but resolved faces while counting the minutes until we storm the Bug fortifications. A reassuring touch of our ID tags, the arming of hand grenades, the securing of our MP, Maschinenpistole submachine gun. It is now 3:30 hours. A whistle sounds. We quickly jump out from under cover and at an insane speed cross the 20 meters to the inflatable boats. In a snatch, we are on the other side of the river, where rattling machine gun fire awaits us. We have our first casualties. With the help of a few Sturmpionieren, we slowly, much too slowly, eat through the barbed wire barriers. Meanwhile, shells fire into the bunkers at Molnikow, Ukraine. We finally get out of this mess. In a few short steps, we are able to advance to the first bunker, arriving in its blind spot. The Reds fire like mad, but are unable to reach us. The decisive moment is near. An explosive specialist approaches the bunker from behind and shoves in a short-fused bomb into the bunker's firehole. The bunker shook, and black smoke emerged from its openings, signalling its final doom. We move on. Molnikow is completely in our hands by 10 o'clock hours. The Reds, hunted by our infantry, disperse quickly to Bisknitzo-Ruski. Because the crossing of the river by our panzers is progressing slowly, we are ordered to cleanse the village of any remaining enemy combatants. The area is combed house by house. Our shelling has caused terrible damage. The Reds, however, have also done their fair share. Slowly our nerves grow accustomed to the all-too-familiar gruesome images. Close to the Reds' customs house lies a large mound of fallen Russians, most of them torn to shreds from the shelling. Slaughtered civilians lie in the neighbouring house. The horridly disfigured bodies of a young woman and her 2 small children lie among their shattered personal belongings in another small, cleansed house. I am compelled to think of you, Roselle and Erica, when I witness such horrible images. How wonderful it is that we are able to exterminate these murderous beasts. How good it is that we have preempted them. For in the coming weeks these bloodhounds might have been standing on German soil. It is inconceivable what would have happened then. We have taken our first prisoners. Snipers and deserters receive their deserved reward. After our panzers arrive, we proceed with our attack under nothing more than light fire and make our advance via Motkovich-Misksov, approximately 40 kilometers from the front. We meet serious resistance near Biskupitsa. Helmut Pfaff and his 14th are pressed hard by enemy tanks. With many casualties, he has had to retreat to Biskupitsa. According to his observations, we should expect an attack from 50 heavy tanks. We move into hedgehog formation at sunset. Although everyone is extremely exhausted after the first day of fighting, no one thinks about sleeping. It is an uneasy, restless night. In the interim, our Luftwaffe comrades deliver a bit of entertainment. Dogfight after dogfight is fought over our heads. One after another, 9 Russian bombers are shot down and crash to the ground in flames. This is the precision work of which fighter pilot Werner Mulders and Adolf Galland are true masters. Galland are true masters. The Russian tank attack commences at noon, with the German counterattack starting 30 minutes later. Never have we experienced anything like this. 100 Russian tanks are fighting against us. The most important thing is to keep the blood cool and the nerves calm. We eliminated 4 tanks within a short amount of time. Approximately 20 Stukas dive bomb, howling from the skies, to attack the Russian tank line. By the afternoon, the battle is decided to our advantage. More than 60 enemy tanks stand burned out or crushed all over the battlefield. Most of the enemy units retreat back to Babitse. We follow close behind them during the night so that we will be able to encircle them. Encirclement of the enemy has been achieved by dawn and continues to close in, despite the desperate attempts by the Reds to break through. The battle culminates around 9 o'clock hours. The tremendous pressure on the enclosed division worries us. The Russians run like maniacs against our lines. The situation becomes extremely critical around 10 o'clock hours, with the enemy encirclement being breached to the southern end of the valley basin. Artillery fire has been ordered, and just minutes later, scores of heavy shells hiss and howl over our heads. A wall of black smoke stands before us. The smoke is at times white, and occasionally holes are torn into it from the shrapnel. The entire valley swills from the impact of the shelling. We are able to reach the first buildings in Babitsa under the cover of the well-positioned fire. The dam spiral mines, spiral minen, explode one after another in angry thunder right before us and over our heads. That sound, that nasty and poisonous sound from the swarms of artillery shelling. With our faces contorted by anger, we jump into the Reds' shrapnel trenches. Anti-tank grenades hammer into their fortifications. All goes crazy now and chaos erupts. The shelling from the Reds spews forth clouds of shrapnel which blow over us. And from these swirls of fire rain down showers of metal into the small pond right in front of us. Rutters, Soviet fighter planes, appear and attack us. Thank God no casualties. We reach the middle of the village around noon. Resistance from the Reds has been broken. An entire Red division has been destroyed. Clusters of dead and wounded soldiers are blocking the street. The number of our own casualties is also high. We are so exhausted we could pass out. Despite this, we reassemble and continue to advance without any noteworthy resistance to the village of Lokacha. The welcome there is not very pleasant, as wild gunfire was awaiting us. Damn snipers. House after house must be cleansed with hand grenades. Fanatics fire at us until the roofs collapse over their heads, and they are buried under the rubble. Others escape their houses at the last minute as human torches. They either collapse dead on the street or are beaten to death. Within the hour, the entire village has transformed into an ocean of flames. A thought comes to mind about our infantry during the slaughtering. How many innocent men have been sent to Kingdom Come? It is a bizarre thought. Our lancers go out and get drunk. As soon as the first house goes up in flames, dead bodies can be found lying on the street. Soldiers destroy and shoot about mercilessly until plumes of smoke cover the horizon. I believe that this raiding by the infantry brings balance to the extreme exertion of marching and fighting. At the single shot of a sniper, the exhausted men return to life. With their nerves pulverized, they have forgotten the barbarian heat, forgotten all that damn traipsing about. An infantry soldier recently said to me, "You see, I was terribly tired, now I am fresh again. It went back to being a good party." Yes, this party makes me sick to my stomach. What I would give to be able to sleep in. After only 2 hours of sleep, we are back at it. We have received orders to rush and break through enemy lines to the south of Lutsk. Will we be successful at crossing the river Styr? Our rapid advance in narrow wedge formation has created a terrible situation for us. Only the banks along the road are able to be cleansed of enemy troops. There is no time to comb the neighbouring forests, which is precisely, however, where the enemy combatants are reassembling. Time and time again there are small battles to the rear of the front line. Supply convoys are being attacked and obliterated by the enemy far behind our own line. Red aircraft are hanging over us today like flies. It is a miracle that their relentless attacks have caused only a few casualties. We reach the Styr around noon. The Reds have broken the river. The flooded territory is kilometres wide, rendering a crossing of the river for our panzers impossible. Attempts to use floating bridges are futile. The enemy fires unremittingly at our bridgehead. A sad day for me. 4 dear comrades have fallen. Walter Wolf, Horace, Muegger the always good-humoured, and Schielke. Many have been badly wounded. I myself am spiritually and physically totally exhausted. If my dear Roselle could see me like this, dirty, jaded, thirsty, I think she would cry out of pity for me. Our beloved homeland, Heimat, will never fully comprehend what we have accomplished during this campaign. They do not have the slightest idea of the difficult terrain we have experienced, nor the types of battles. We have just had another attack from a red Tiefflieger, low-flying bomber. Gruber was killed. He had just married his bride 8 days ago by proxy. The night is restless. Hell must be loose to the rear of the line. The sky is blood red. Relentless rumbling and thunder are indicative of the heavy battle occurring all around us. Our panzers roll in to provide reinforcement. At present, we receive news that the battle for Lutsk has commenced. At dawn, we notice dark, smoky clouds hanging over the riverbanks close to the village. Latest observations in the morning bring no changes to the situation. It is still impossible to get the vehicles across the river. We receive orders from Division HQ and are commanded to cross the Styr near Lutsk, despite the chance of meeting strong Russian tank forces there. Very well, we take off toward our destination all by ourselves, without the support of heavy artillery and infantry, which will cross the river by way of the floating bridges. The constant attacks from the enemy are sickening. Enemy aircraft, mostly bombers, suddenly attack, as if they were coming from right behind the hedges. All of the drama is over within seconds. First, the incredible thunder of detonations. Next, the hammering of onboard cannons from the bombers. And finally, the smell of dark and foul smoke, along with the hissing and singing of shrapnel over our heads. In the end, the wounded are shrieking, and the show is over. That is how it went 5 times until we arrived in Lutsk. The number of casualties is considerable. Slowly, we enter the village, all while keeping our left and right flanks secure. We are able to take a short break in the town centre. The time is used to collect the injured and take a swig from our canteen. The beating that the town has taken from the Stukas and heavy artillery is extensive. The local prison is a gruesome sight. Prior to their retreat, the Bolshevik mob staged a terrible bloodbath. More than 100 men, women and children were slaughtered like cattle. Never will I forget such appalling images. These are the dead of our enemies, for those bloodhounds and murderers would prey on English priests. Meanwhile, a few comrades have pulled the remaining Rotarmisten, Red Army soldiers and Jews from their hiding places. A solo gun performance echoed across the square, and with that the mob ascended to the heavens of the English High Church. We move on. Together with our panzers, we advance slowly to the east side of the village, where Russian tanks suddenly appear. Parks, anti-tank cannons, have never before been brought into position so quickly. Our panzers are deployed. We lie atop them, packed with hand grenades in order to eliminate the approaching infantry. After an hour of battle, the attacking behemoths and their accompanying fighters are either destroyed or have fled. Unfortunately, we too have suffered the loss of some of our panzers. I was on top of one of them, but was incredibly lucky that it did not catch fire. Such an episode is typical for the entire damn Eastern campaign. The panzers that have been able to make a quick advance are already in Lutsk, approximately 40 kilometers from here. Lutsk was captured by our troops this morning, and the area around the town has been cleansed of enemy troops. So where did the enemy tanks and infantry suddenly come from? This Asian mob is sly and cunning. Every hour brings an evil surprise, a large pile of shit. We are no longer safe anywhere. There is not a single hour of peace and quiet. It is true that I am not a coward. Fear is a term unknown to me. It is rather eerie, however, to ride alone on a messenger motorcycle through large stretches of forest that have yet to be cleansed. Over the past few days, the Reds have shot many messengers on their motorcycles, dragging them off their bikes in order to torture them terribly and then to kill them. The rashness of the Russian strategy can be seen in the following example. This afternoon, when Russian tanks appeared, the crew of one of our panzers climbed out to position its cannon. When we returned, we found it all in flames. A civilian who was in hiding had set it on fire. He was captured and also set on fire. There is strong ground and aircraft activity from the Russians during the evening. We hear rumours that we have been encircled by enemy tanks. Scheisse. Stay calm and wait and see. Russian anti-tank guns, 7.5, 22 centimetres, hammered our positions the entire night. Once again, a night without any peace and sleep. By dawn, the Ratas are present in large numbers. However, none of their firing succeeds at making it into our holes. Like drunken men, they move in, veering to the right, then sharply to the left. We fire like crazy. We know very well what these manoeuvres mean. They're sniffing about our positions. Soon they will either take us under well-targeted fire, or the heavy Flundern, will dive down and dribble a dozen or so bombs into our holes. We are therefore ordered to immediately change positions, which is not that easy, since we are under machine gun fire. As expected, a jolly group of heavy bombers appear a few minutes later. Again, everything happens in a matter of seconds. Chunks of earth are propelled into the air just 40 to 50 meters from us. Dirt, mud, roots, and entire sections of ground swirl about in the air. Glowing hot pieces of shrapnel land right at our feet. Jagged bolts of lightning slam into the ground with a loud roar. Though as quickly as it started, it was over. The ghostly silence that follows eats on our nerves. Wounded soldiers are moaning. What will come next? A third and fourth wave, which uncover our exact positions and blow the living lights out of us. Minutes of anxious waiting follow, but nothing happens. Enemy fire has even started to subside. A single SMG, Schwer's Maschinengewehr heavy machine gun, chugs on for a while, and then there is silence. What is going on? Why don't the Reds attack this ridiculous bunch of ours? Shortly after, we are given an answer. Our infantry had hobbled in a forced march to our aid. Hobbled because it is impossible to talk about walking when mentioning these poor fellows, who have no shoes to cover their blistered feet. As courteous as the Russians are, they left the area to our soldiers. Now, though, the leaf is about to turn. The rest of our motorized groups and, most importantly, our artillery arrive in the morning. Even more important, though, is the food. The B-wagon have also arrived. We would have suffered terribly had the Russians attacked us with only a few drops of gas left in our tanks. No enemy contact as we advance. Red fighter planes try to disrupt our convoy every now and then, but these brothers do not dare a true attack today, for we have our comrades from the MGK with us today. It is glorious how they pierce the blue skies with their twin-barrel machine guns. Our Heeresfla, anti-aircraft forces, stutter as if they are possessed. The gentlemen of the Ratas soon tuck in their tails and disappear while growling ferociously. The farewell they bid with their onboard cannons unfortunately costs us 2 wounded soldiers. The morning delivers an explanation as to why the Russians disappeared so quickly. We have taken a few Ukrainian POW who had been hiding out in the bushes. They had lost the will to continue fighting and are better informed about the situation than we are, and what they have to say, as their meaningful grins demonstrate, makes us happy. The Russians are encircled, and since the encirclement is weak around Dubno, they have begun to concentrate their forces there in order to try and break through. We reach Dubno in the evening, following a rapid march. The town is free of enemy troops. Earlier in the afternoon, the Russians were forced to surrender the town after putting up a desperate fight. They didn't leave before vandalizing the town like a bunch of Schweiner pigs. Everything has been crushed to pieces. We find a large pile of mutilated dead bodies in the town prison. A so-called check of the road on our sidecar motorcycle almost costs us by a hair's breadth our lives. The Reds need to schedule some extra shooting lessons for their recruits. One should be able to hit a motorcycle with 3 people from a distance of 150 meters. Yes, when one has joyfully survived, one can make fun of the situation. I think that if our helmets had not been on top of our heads, our hair would have stood straight up. The odds were 100-3. Our artillery has let out some hellfire in the area where the Russians were retreating at dusk. Along with our 9th Panzer Division, we advance in pursuit of the Russians. Our panzers continue to scope out the area under the cover of night. We stay behind to protect the flanks. Anyone who knows what it means to protect the flanks in a war with the Bolsheviks understands that we will have yet again another sleepless night. Against the odds, the night is quiet according to our standards, as we have grown accustomed over the past few days to quite a bit of noise. Shells fly here and there into the fields behind us. Smaller caliber shots are buzzing right before our feet. A hellish spectacle takes place near the runway around 0300 hours. Our panzers must have encountered enemy forces, yet the Reds are nowhere to be seen around here. The sun burns mercilessly onto our heads. Our limbs are heavy like lead. How nice it would be to take a nap over there in the shade. The Alta Sergeant must be capable of reading our minds. Anyone who is not in charge of the cannons can lie down and sleep. People forget where they are. They just fall down on the spot. Others are able to make it into the barn, simply to collapse onto the floor and fall sound asleep. It is evening when we wake up, our stomachs growling. Here are my words of praise to our cook the Rudolph, playful reference to the most dominant stag. He is always with us on the front lines, and he is just as tired as we are. Yet he is the one who has prepared a nice meal of pork while we were sleeping. Cries of joy arise from our troops, which is followed by a scolding from our superior officer. The cook is nonetheless touched by our delight. The meal that followed allowed us to almost forget the dead, which were lying 100-fold everywhere. Shortly after dinner, something terrible happens. One of those damn 122 caliber cannons, which has been ploughing around quite regularly, crashed into Group Franca. As the foul smoke retreats, the horrible sight is revealed. There, amongst the chaos, between the tree trunks, shards of metal and pools of blood, lie 8 dead comrades. Franca himself lies half buried in the ground in a trench, staring obtusely at the chaos. He lashes about at us as we try to dig him out, yelling, "What do you want from me? I'm staying with my men." The poor guy is close to insanity. After a short time, he passes out. He has lost a lot of blood, almost too much blood. A piece of shrapnel has smashed his arm. Life is funny. It was the last Russian shell that struck our camp and caused all of that damage. Not a single shot was fired that night. At the beginning of July, 1941. It is quiet again this morning. I am lying in the grass, looking into the beautiful blue summer sky above me. Tiny white clouds are sailing west toward the homeland. The grass has a strong scent. Bumblebees and honeybees are flying from flower to flower. It is similar to peacetime in the Vile Valley. Do you remember, dear Roselle, how we used to lie next to each other under the sun on the slopes of the valley? You would talk so eloquently and passionately about the life of the ants. I wonder what you are doing right now. I long for you so much. A reconnaissance group returns and has brought prisoners with them. Most of the prisoners are wounded. The unit discovered a few enemy positions. Most of the prisoners were taken from local pig farms, where they had been attempting to hide. The Russian soldier is a very strange creature. We Germans will never understand them. On the one hand, they are an immeasurably good-natured, helpful and hospitable people. On the other, they are sadistically gruesome. A German-speaking Ukrainian once told me regarding this. A week ago, Russian heavy artillery was being put into position in Dubno, when a small child ran in front of one of the caterpillars, Raupen, and fell. The Russian operating the vehicle saved the child from being rolled over at the last minute. Tears of joy ran down the soldier's cheeks for the successful rescue. He picked the little girl up into his arms, gave her some candy, and took her home to her mother. When he arrived at the house, the soldier destroyed everything, raped the mother, knocked her unconscious, and cut off her breasts. As he left, he gave the little girl some more candy and a small picture of a saint as a farewell. That's Russia. Who can understand what is going on here? The Russian soldier is a tough opponent who stands his ground until the last bullet. He cannot compare to the bravery of the German soldier who gladly fights for the big goat, der Gross-Sieg. Comrade General put me here to shoot. This is why I stand here and shoot. Dispassionate and in no way convinced by Karl Marx's philosophy, they stand unexcited in their trenches and shoot. The political commissars in the cities and villages, however, are totally different. Like snipers, they ambush our troops marching through the cities. Good luck to the German soldier who falls into their hands. With sadistic joy, they will torture him to death and then mutilate his body beyond recognition. We have already witnessed such atrocious scenes. I pray to God that I will not be taken prisoner. It is quiet again today. No shots have been fired. What is going on? I do not like this silence. It eats at my nerves. The Reds have run away and are surely somewhere plotting an evil plan. We hear no news from reconnaissance. The heat is making us anxious and aggressive. One even sits in the shade like a pig roasting over a spit. The wind blows the sweaty scent of decay into our noses. Damn the smell of dead bodies. Today everything is making me crazy. It is noon, and we are sitting around in a daze. We are sweaty and thirsty, yet we have nothing left to drink. The wells are surely poisoned, and the water that we had brought with us was drunk ages ago. Digging new wells during the day is too dangerous. The evening brings cool air and a better mood. We are looking forward to a good night's sleep in the comfortable barn. I continue to be suspicious because of the silence. The thunder of cannons is approaching us from the west. West, that is the direction we came from. Something is going on. This comes as no surprise. A motorcycle messenger from the division races up to us. Alert! Get ready and climb in your vehicles. We leave camp 5 minutes later. It is 21 o'clock hours. We depart on the road that we arrived on from Dubno. Meanwhile, though, it has become pitch dark. The awful road, ripped open by shell fire, is the biggest challenge for Sepp's driving skills and my good eyes. All of a sudden, a sharp jerk, and we're stuck in a crater left by a shell. Damn darkness. I hit my shin bones so hard that I am seeing stars. By the time we have pulled the motorcycle out of the hole, our entire convoy has passed and is far ahead. There is no one to be seen around. Black loneliness is all that surrounds us. We hear the staccato of a machine gun somewhere in the distance. We pass intersections and forks in the road, nothing. We just keep moving. Thank goodness I know our destination, Nowini. There are officers sitting in a ditch off to the right side of the road. How do we get to Nowini? You have to turn left. And so we drive and drive. It has now been hours. At 1:30 hours we reach a small village. An officer is standing at the last house and stops us. He is terribly anxious and asks us if we are crazy. I take this as a matter of fact and calmly ask why he is so agitated. The news that he shares does not bring me any comfort. The village and the surrounding area has been cleared by our infantry, because an attack of about 200 Russian tanks is expected in an hour. Scheisse. Our guardian angel advises us to turn back, as it would be suicide to drive any further. We are Panzerjäger, anti-tank reconnaissance, and not infantrymen, Herr Lieutenant, and we continue on our way. We drive and drive. No creatures are anywhere to be found. Daylight is starting to appear in the east. I have a weird feeling in my arse. We should have arrived in Nowini a long time ago. Before us stands a large forest, and I order the engine to be turned off. Intently we listen into the night. Not very far from us, Russian commands are clearly audible through the humming and banging. A chill runs down my back. The shock almost overwhelms me. We are in the sector where the Russians are positioning their tanks for the attack. In an instant, we jump on our motorcycle, start the engine and race off. After an hour, we arrive at that infamous intersection. The officers are gone, and the Sturmpionjären are digging in anti-tank mines. When we arrive, they stare at us as if we are ghosts. We had to turn to the right, not to the left. 5 minutes later, we rejoin our division in Nowini. It is 3 o'clock hours, and the PKs are being brought into attack formation. We lie in our trenches and await the first wave, which should roll toward us within the next few minutes. Our hearts are hammering in our chests, our foreheads are cold and white. With fire in our eyes, we stare toward the gentle waves in the field from where we expect the attack. Soon masses of Russian tanks will approach. We know all too well that it will be life or death for each and every one of us today. To surprise our leaders, the Russians have organized an entire tank division and infantry in the adjacent forests. They are going to attempt to break through in this area, since the front line here is extremely narrow. On the double, we gathered together an infantry battalion and our tank buster unit, along with 10 anti-tank cannons in order to oppose the Russians. It is now 3:30 hours. There, on the hill directly in front of us, the Russians suddenly appear. Slowly, in a zigzag maneuver, the first wave approaches. They have all the time in the world to floor us. Aim 70! Damn it, just keep cool. Patience. Let these Schweine come closer. 100 meters. 90 meters. 80. Now 70 meters. Almost simultaneously, 10 shells from our 10 anti-tank cannons strike the approaching steel monsters. Is it possible? Flames and black smoke are rising from 4 tanks. 5 other tanks are standing motionless. The halt has been lifted. Now our task starts. Leave the trenches. Under the cover of our cannons, we draw closer to the tanks that are still standing, and which are still firing like crazy. The second wave approaches, and there on top of the hill one can already see the third wave. We must retreat, as we are under heavy fire. One after the other, we work our way back from one trench to the next. My comrade on the left throws his arms in the air. He's been hit. The cannon that was protecting us suddenly breaks apart a direct hit. A comrade lies motionless on the ground right in front of me, dead. And to my right, a soldier is also shouting for the medic. Just 20 meters to the trench. Please, God, help. Will this be the end? They are now shooting shells right in front of our feet. I throw myself down on the ground and hold onto the earth. The ground is being ripped up right before me. I jump up once again, almost stumbling over 2 comrades who have been torn apart from the shelling. Damn tank cannons. Another impact right in front of me. The shrapnel is howling around my ears. A fist-sized chunk shreds my gas mask. More shrapnel severs the handpiece from my machine gun. And then I finally make it. I am now in the trench. I suddenly do not care anymore. I throw myself on the ground, face to the sky, and wait for the tanks to arrive and crush me. Poor Roselle, sweet Erica. Your husband fell on the field of honour on the 3rd of July, etc., etc. Don't think, do not think. Meanwhile, the following happened in our section. The accurate fire of our cannons fought off the first attack, and our anti-tank cannons took advantage of the chaos that followed to change their positions. The second wave pushes wild firing toward our previous positions in an attempt to crush us. Suddenly, they receive fire into their flanks from the east. A few heavy tanks are eliminated. They turn immediately to the east and take our current position under fire. Side note: this saves my life. Apart from myself, there was no one else at our former position. 2 men succeeded in making it into the woods to the west. The remaining men were lying in the field, either dead or wounded. Moments later, the third wave approaches from the hill, and at the same time, our assault guns advance, firing in turn at the second and third waves. This situation may be unique to the entire Eastern campaign. The leaders know that only this move alone will be able to save us from destruction. Remaining cool-blooded is the key to success in such circumstances. One imprecise shot can hit our own assault guns and vice versa. Inaccurate fire from our anti-tank cannons can destroy our own assault guns. Being fired at from 2 sides, the second wave veers to the north, creating havoc for the third wave. 16 more Red tanks are destroyed, and the rest attempt to take cover on the side of the hill. And then a miracle happens. German SS troops in camouflage jackets appear to our rear. It is the Leibstandarte, Adolf Hitler, finally arriving after hours of waiting. They were halted somewhere around Dubno and ordered on a forced march to come to our aid. They had only been in their positions for about 10 minutes before alternating rows of Russian tanks and soldiers appeared. The battle lasted 3 hours. It was a terrible butchery, a man-against-man fight that could not have been any worse. A bayonet wounds my upper arm. Get the first aid kit and move on. The sun is burning down on our helmets. I'm no longer wearing my jacket. To their surprise, we attack enemy tanks and soldiers, who are dressed in just their shirts and pants. Aircraft arrive and join in on the ground attack with great effect. The entire valley is stirring like a cauldron. Victory comes that afternoon. The Reds attack for the last time around 15 o'clock hours. The masses charge with a loud hurrah! There are no longer any tanks. With our concentrated fire, we mowed them down row after row. The attack is gloriously crushed. The Russians make a final retreat to the north. As sweet as victory may be, our casualties are numerous. Of the 12 ordnances in the 3rd, 7 have been destroyed by direct hits. My knees are soft like rubber. Don't collapse. Although our strength is fading, there is no time to rest. That same night we march on to Rhone. Around midnight we stop at a village lying peacefully blanketed in the moonlight. We have not had any enemy contact until here. The plan is to stay here the rest of the night and sleep in the houses. However, we receive warning to move on, as the village may or may not be held by the Russians. Once again, we rest in the ditch next to the road. After making several detours, we arrive at our destination at around 0700 hours. We are refreshed after a few hours' sleep. The Russians have retreated a great distance. The division's order of the day is read that afternoon. It is full of praise for our troops' courage during yesterday's tank battle. However, we also receive bad news. 36 comrades fell and many were wounded. The announcement ends on a staggering note. Red motorized units ambushed a supply convoy and annihilated it. 53 comrades were butchered. Unfortunately, 3 of our own panzers arrived on scene too late. Miechen, Huffmann, Brosig, Sudbach and Schmidt from our unit died yesterday. We continue our march in the morning. Our panzers took Rhone last night, and we push forward in a forced march to cleanse the area like any infantry would. The heat is terrible. Our infantry marches in this heat 150 kilometres in 2 days. All the units are working tremendously hard. We continue on after midnight. Our pace is extreme. We barely have time to eat, and we don't dare think of sleeping. We break through the lines of a few weak enemy forces that are attempting to stand in our way. We leave their destruction to the troops that follow to our rear. Push forward, it's all or nothing. Damn it, what is all anyway? What is going on? During the sparse breaks, we shuffle about on our legs of rubber. The sun is burning mercilessly on our skulls. The engines are humming quietly and radiate the stench of diesel. The dust is so thick that I am unable to see the person in front of me. My eyes tear up and burn. My mug, fresse or face, is crusted with dirt. The damn limestone gets in everywhere. We reach Korchech at night. We pass through the town after a short battle. We roll on at a maddening speed. Orders to halt are finally issued after an hour. I feel like I was just put through a meat grinder. I let myself collapse a few steps from my motorcycle. Even the enticing smell coming from the mobile field kitchen is unable to motivate me to get up. Sleep? I just want to sleep. Our artillery fires all throughout the night. I think there is danger brewing out on the front lines. The air is thick and I can smell trouble. Rumours are circulating that we are in proximity to the dreaded Stalin Line. In the early hours of the morning, strings of Russian fighters appear at low altitude. Their onboard machine guns scour our positions, and bomb after bomb is dropped across our lines. Thank goodness there are no casualties. It calms down around noon, and how about that, we receive mail. After 14 days, a letter from Roselle. I am so happy to have that woman as my wife. Her bravery can be felt in each line. Her good heart gives me much courage and comfort for the difficult hours to come. I have only one wish, to get home in good health and to thank her Scheisse. No sleep again last night. At around 2300 hours, our old reconnaissance group crept forward through the swamps around the Sluts River. We must have looked ridiculous with our painted war faces. On top of our heads we had our hurretute, slang for steel helmet, camouflaged with dirt and garnished with reed. We carried a bag with hand grenades around our chest and our machine gun over our shoulders. Our only clothing was a bathing suit. Our bodies were covered in clay from head to toe. That was how we left camp. We made it to the first line of enemy bunkers without seeing any infantry or trenches. We returned around 2 o'clock hours without ever being noticed by the Russians. I tried to sleep, though with no luck, due to the thousands of disgusting mosquitoes from the swamps that torture us down to the blood. It can drive one crazy. All of that on top of the heat and constant thirst. Unexpectedly, at 11 o'clock hours, a swift attack from the Stalin line. At the same time, Russian bombers attack at low altitude. We are suddenly awoken from our slumber. The first salvo was alarmingly precise. Wounded soldiers are crying and moaning. Foul-smelling smoke hangs below the trees. 10 minutes later, and the ground near us bursts into the air. Fragments of splinters fly into our foxholes. The firewall moves slowly toward the so-called Tarn position. Here, shells and bombs create a dreadful bloodbath. 41 dead and 82 wounded lie where our Kradschützen, motorcycle infantry, had been positioned. We have to work until late in the evening in order to recover the dead and secure our wounded comrades. My heart aches when I think of their loved ones, their mothers, wives, and children. We regroup and reposition on the same night due to the large number of casualties. The grand attack against the front lines and the fortifications to the west of Zwiahel, Novorad-Volinsky, will commence tomorrow morning. The situation is as follows. Our scouts discovered days ago that 5th Army is moving in a forced march towards Zwiahel, so as to secure an important crossing over the Sluch River. The crossings are being protected by strong enemy units. However, thanks to our forced march, we have arrived here first. I now understand the reason why we were marching at such an insane speed during these past few days. The primary Red Army formations are still a day's march to the east of Zwiahel. We must use all our strength to break through the strongholds so as to take the city and river crossings tomorrow. Each and every one of us knows what is at stake. We are ready. The big coup was a success. Today, around noon, the town of Zwiahel and the crossings over the Sluts fell into our hands after fierce resistance just in time. The initial units of the Russian 5th Army arrived at just about the same time. We could not have asked for anything better than to have the band of fortifications now destroyed. The effect of our 30.5 caliber mortars and Stukas was devastating. Together with the Sturmpioneren, we contributed well to the collapse of the bunkers. The Reds make a retreat to their fortified positions by the woods, where the masses of enemy soldiers are regrouping for a counterattack. We, however, are rewarded by having our heads blooded for our attempt to follow and destroy the Russians. We are outnumbered. With our one and only division, we're supposed to hold the city and bridgehead until noon tomorrow. We can only expect the adjoining divisions to arrive tomorrow at the earliest. The faces of the officers and soldiers are very serious. How far along are the preparations on the other side for an attack? Will the flank reinforcements arrive in time? Nothing but questions for which there are no answers. The situation is grave or even desperate. If the Russians attack now or during the night, their sheer masses will trample us into the ground. Stories from the Great War about the Russian steamroller, Dampfwalzer, suddenly come to mind. Yes, they will definitely smash us to a pulp of blood and dirt. Again, the orders are made clear. The town and bridgehead will be held to the last man. It is evening. Hour after hour we expect the attack. However, nothing happens. With the exception of the flashes from cannon fire, nothing out of the ordinary is occurring on the other side. What is happening? Are the Russians going to miss their big chance once again? Don't they know that their opponents are nothing more than small combat forces? Again we start to ponder our thoughts, which are beginning to eat on our nerves. At midnight, the order to send out reconnaissance troops comes as a blessing. Soon after, the old cast leaves our lines. The Russians have also sent out patrol units. We encounter one of them during our investigation. We take one prisoner after a brief exchange of fire. The night is pitch black. Occasionally we hear the whistling of a shell or of tracers flying through the sky. Otherwise it is quiet. It is only between the lines that scouts from both sides are crawling around, trying to sniff their way around the enemy's position and gather information. Upon their discovery, a short burst of a machine gun follows, and then it is quiet again. The damn silence is making me suspicious. We returned to our lines at dawn. Interrogation of our prisoner confirmed our suspicions. An entire army lies on the other side. However, they appear not to be firmly entrenched yet. Someone delivered the mail during the night. A letter received by one of our comrades is passed from trench to trench. In it, someone is complaining about working overtime, the shortage of beer and cigarettes, and other similar matters. How little does that idiot understand about the things that go on out here? Is that the voice of the homeland? They will hear our stories of success at home, and Mr. Indispensable will say in triumph, "Well, we've done a great job, haven't we?" Let it be said, you local natives, if anyone has accomplished anything, it was us. Well, we are indebted to you for our great weapons and ammunition without duds, but the Russians too have good weapons, sometimes even better than ours. The key factor is the spirit and bravery of the person carrying those weapons. None of you guys have any idea of these two things. Shame on you if you think that you have fought these battles and have accomplished such great victories with your overtime. Think about our overtime out here. The reward for some of us was a burning piece of metal in our spine. The idiot continues to write in his letter to the front that we had it better out here. Here, not because he has remembered his manhood, but because there is an abundance of cigarettes, beer and schnapps at the front, and the shootings aren't that bad at all. Such impertinence leaves one speechless. Dear sir, you are more than welcome to join us. You will shit in your pants because of all these cigarettes and cigars in the air. But enough of that, we have other issues and problems than talking about the whining of a home fighter. My anger is blown away when I think of the pure idealism of my parents. IR 530 Find 30th Infantry Regiment receives orders at 10 o'clock hours to push forward from Rozadkauka toward Chikauka. After battling for 4 hours over every yard and suffering an enormous amount of casualties, they have to retreat to their original positions. If we hadn't had the heavy artillery, which protected the flanks with an iron curtain, the Russians would have rolled over our entire front line from the flanks. Unfortunately, the Russians have encircled part of the retreating regiment. It is impossible to utilize our artillery. The danger of hitting your own guys is too large. Therefore, volunteers are needed. There is not much discussion among us comrades are in danger, which is all we need to know. In company formation, we attempt to attack the Russians simultaneously from both sides. We each throw our 2 smoke grenades at the right moment. The Russians seem to be sensitive to the white smoke. They assume a large-scale counterattack from the west and retreat to their fortified positions. We lose a few comrades who approach too close to the iron curtain that the Russian heavy artillery has erected around our position. We make our way back to our lines with just a small number of casualties. Arriving at our positions, we receive good news. Reinforcement divisions have arrived on our flanks. Thank goodness. A huge weight has been lifted from our chests. The attack will commence tomorrow. Wonderful.